Hey guys, Sarah here. Today I'm going to be going over another Q&A. I got a few more questions submitted to me through both Facebook and YouTube this time, so I'm going to answer them. I'm going to not give the last names of the people on Facebook, and I'll probably just give the usernames from those who submitted questions on YouTube. So if you have any corn snake questions that you want to ask me, submit them in the comments down below, and I will get to them in the next video, hopefully. I'm also considering starting a new YouTube series where I go over different morphs, different genes, and I explain them in a little more detail. I did this in my two corn snake books. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but I have two books. One of them is the History of Base Mutations, which goes over like amel, anery, caramel, stripe, diffused, and how they originated, who hatched the first one, who found the first one, how they, were determined to be recessive or dominant or whatever. So all of that is gone over in volume 1. Volume 2 goes over all of the effects of selective breeding. So selectively bred morphs are going to be like your sunglow amels as opposed to just regular amels, or vanishing stripes as opposed to just regular stripes, and how those came to be and what they look like in comparison to the originals. So both of these can be found on my website, sarahsnakeshop.com. I'm not doing physical copies of them right now. Right now everything is just going to be downloadable ebook, which is going to be PDF format, so it can be read on pretty much any device. As long as you have Adobe Reader, you'll be able to access it and read it on your phone or on your laptop or anything like that. If I get enough sales of the ebooks, I will probably go back and do more copies of the physical books and sell those as well. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. I didn't get too many requests for physical books. People seem to just really want the ebooks. But if I get enough, if you hound me enough, I might go ahead and make another batch of the physical books, and I might even sign some of them. I've actually signed this one for a friend of mine that will be sent out very soon. So if you want one of those, just put it in the comments down below. Like I said, if you hound me enough, I might actually do it. And let me know down below also if you want me to start a series on going over each of the different genes. It's something that I'm really good at. It's something that I really enjoy. And if you also enjoy it or you want to know more about it, let me know. All right, I'm going to jump into the questions. I'm going to start with one from Facebook from Amanda, and she asks, do you recommend getting a baby or young adult for a beginner snake owner? I've heard many different opinions. My opinion, as a breeder, I would say it's going to be a lot better if it's your first snake, if you're getting a corn snake, to get something that's a little bit more well established. When I first started, I got a very tiny itty bitty baby corn snake that hadn't even eaten its first meal yet, and that was actually okay. It really depends on the snake. Every snake is going to be different. Every snake has a different personality. Some of them, you're going to get them and they're going to eat and it's going to be fine and you'll never have any problems. But some of them, if they've never eaten before, they can be really nervous and they don't get started very well. So if you're playing the better safe than sorry game, it's definitely better to go with one that's at least 6 months old, maybe 6 months to a year, or even a sub-adult, which is about 2 years old. If you really want something that you know is well established. If you get something that's 6 months old, you pretty much know at that point that it's well established. If it's lived to 6 months, that means it's eating, it's pooping, it's shedding, it's doing all the things that it should do. So if you're nervous but you really want to start with a younger snake, 6 months old is a really good age to start with. All right, the next question comes from YouTube from Ginny Reisinger, and she asked, one question I used to have to answer all the time at my shows was about heating issues. So maybe you could explain the need for thermostats on heat and how heat lamps are not needed for corn snakes. Ginny and I have known each other for a while, and I definitely agree with her. You do not need heat lamps for corn snakes. In fact, I would generally steer away from heat lamps. A lot of people like to use them because they seem convenient, but you don't need them, and in fact it usually ends up drying out the enclosure. So if you're trying to keep the humidity at 60, 70, 80%, maybe even higher than that if the snake is getting ready to shed, a heat lamp is just going to dry everything out. And corn snakes can live anywhere between like 45 degrees and like 85, maybe 90 degrees. 90 is kind of pushing it on the high end, 45 is kind of pushing it on the low end. But it's better for them to be a little bit cooler and than to be like overheated. One thing I see a lot is people want to get the heat rocks that go in enclosures. I don't ever recommend getting a heat source that goes directly inside the enclosure, no matter what it is. Because for one, that means a cord has to go outside of the enclosure somehow, which means that's one more hole that your snake could try to escape from. But for another reason, anything that the snake can come in direct contact with that could potentially burn them is never something I recommend putting into your enclosure. Heat rocks are known for overheating and for burning snakes. So for any kind of snake, I do not recommend a heat rock. For any kind of reptile, I don't know why heat rocks are even a thing. I understand that a lot of people get this concept of, well, snakes will bask on rocks in the wild and they like the heat. Yes, but they like the heat from the sun. They don't necessarily are getting the heat from the rock itself. And those rocks out in the wild are probably not going to get to like 150, 200 degrees like these little heat rocks will. So definitely throw away any heat rocks you have. It doesn't matter what reptile it is. Do not use heat rocks. They are known to burn reptiles. And if you were thinking about putting your like heat mat or anything like that, especially light bulbs inside the enclosure, do not do it. Find another way to heat your enclosure so that the heat source is not inside the enclosure if you can. If it's possible for your snake to not come in direct contact with the heat source, that's going to be your best option. Heat lamps can be really bad, especially inside the enclosure, because you don't want the snake to touch the light bulb. I have seen people that have like the light bulbs with cages over the outside of them, and those snakes figure out how to get inside the cages, but maybe sometimes they can't get out, and those light bulbs just end up burning them. So definitely stay away from that. I think the thing that I would recommend the most as far as heat goes is getting a heat mat with a thermostat or heat tape with a thermostat. If you only have one snake or maybe two, just the heat mat is going to be good. You don't necessarily need to do heat tape. Heat tape is more if you're trying to heat like maybe a rack or a lot of different enclosures all at once. Heat tape is essentially a heat mat that covers a wider area. They work very similarly as far as the electronics and how they heat. So heat tape is just like a really long heat mat. That's, essentially. So if you're trying to heat a lot of different enclosures or a heat rack or something, heat tape is good. If it's just one or two little enclosures, go ahead and do heat mats. Thermostats can range anywhere between like $20 to like $120, depending on the quality. Pet stores sometimes don't carry thermostats, unfortunately, even though I definitely think they should. If you can't find a thermostat in a pet store, you can go to a garden section in, Lowe's or any other place that has a garden section, really, because a lot of people will use the thermostats or a thermostat of some kind just to keep their greenhouse temperatures regulated. A lot of people like to grow inside during the winter. I myself do the same thing, and I just have a regular thermostat for plants, and those are usually relatively cheap. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that, but that's my phone. It's the Zelda. It's one of the Zelda themes. I really enjoy The Legend of Zelda. Don't know about y'all, but it's probably my favorite video game series. Sorry for that tangent, but just get a thermostat. If you're trying to heat a lot of snakes, and especially if your heat tape covers a lot of the enclosure, definitely get like a higher end thermostat. You don't have to necessarily go with $120 one, but spend at least like $50 to $80 if you are heating a lot of different snakes, because that's going to save you a lot of heartache, and honestly, in the long term, it's going to save you a lot of money, because you have thermostats that might fail, and if your thermostat, if there is a problem, then when you're heating a lot of different snakes, you can like overheat the enclosures too much. A lot of things can happen. It's just better safe than sorry when it comes to your thermostats, especially for a lot of snakes. Now, if you just have like one corn snake and like a glass vivarium, get like a small heat mat that maybe only covers about a third of the bottom area, put it underneath, and get maybe just like a $20 thermostat. That would be sufficient, and it'll probably work for a very long time. One of the biggest reasons to get a thermostat as opposed to just having a heat mat that's on all the time is heat mats and heat rocks and stuff like that. Sometimes they can fail hot. And essentially that means if their internal thermostat stops working, they just are on full blast. And that can cause a lot of heating issues in your enclosure, and again, could potentially burn your snake or just overheat your snake, which is not something you want. When it comes to snakes, especially like baby corn snakes, they're more susceptible to overheating than they are to underheating. Now, that doesn't mean you want them to be cold, but you definitely want to make sure that they have like a pretty steady temperature between like 75 at night maybe and 85 during the day, or constantly have like an 80 to 85 warm area, and the thermostat will help regulate that. That's sort of the whole point. So I hope that answered that question. I know that Ginny, like I said, she's one of my good friends, and we talk a lot about this kind of stuff. And I'm really glad that she brought it up, because that is a question that I get from a lot of people, is like, what's the best way to heat the enclosure? And just stay away from heat rocks, throw those away. If you're going to use a heat lamp, which I don't recommend, I would use it sparingly. Your corn snakes especially, don't need UVB lights, so don't worry about UVB. If they're in a room that has some ambient light, like kind of what I have in here, I don't know if you can kind of see the light kind of fading in and out. That's because clouds are going by. That is enough light for a corn snake. That is enough natural light, so you don't have to worry about UVB with your corn snake. I hope that answered the heating question. I am going to go ahead and go on to the next question from Batty. Batty asks from Facebook, when you take your corns to the vet, what sort of containers do you use? Corn snakes, it really depends. If you have a bigger corn snake that's 3-5 feet long, you can put them in a pillowcase. I know that sounds kind of weird, but as long as it's like cotton or at least breathable, you can then tie the top of the pillowcase up on itself and take your snake to the vet in that. Like I said, they are breathable, and if your snake decides to go to the bathroom, it's kind of absorbent. Another option is, especially if you have a smaller snake, to just get like a butter bowl or some sort of food takeaway container with some holes in it. We use these deli containers that are about that big around. They're specifically made for snakes and for reptiles. They already have pre-punched holes, and those are really nice. I like to use those. You can buy them online. But if you don't have something like that, or you don't want to have to buy 10 of them, just a butter bowl or something like that works fine. A lot of people also like to use critter keepers. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's critter with a K and keeper with a K. They come in all different sizes. They come in like quarter of a gallon, half gallon, 1 gallon. And they already have lids that snap on, and the lid kind of has a hole in it for ventilation. So if you want something that's a little nicer, a little more fancy, you can probably go to a pet store and find a critter keeper if you don't want to use like a butter bowl or a pillowcase. Let's see, I'm already at 13 minutes, and I was hoping to get done with this video in 15, so we're gonna try. All right. Let's see, username in a minute on YouTube asks, if I live in a warm area where it's almost always 80 plus degrees, is it safe to have a corn snake? Or should I still get a heat mat? It really depends on what the internal temperature of your home is on this. If the internal temperature of your home or where you plan to have the snake is 80 degrees, 85 degrees, you probably don't need to get any heat source. I wouldn't worry about it. But if you keep your house at 75 or lower, I would definitely get a heat mat with a thermostat, and just keep it, right at 80. So it's not gonna like overheat your house. Again, you don't have to do like, this is another place where heat lamps are not really great, is they're gonna also heat up the area around them, and sometimes you don't want that heat. Like if it's already hot in your house, you don't want that extra heat like in the room that you're in. A heat mat really isolates the heat to where you want it, and that's also very nice. If your house is getting like over 85 degrees though, It might be a little iffy. You really don't want to keep your corn snake where it's 90 degrees like all the time. If your house is staying like 85 to 90, like over 85, it might be worth trying to figure out a way to like cool the room down that the snake is in. Even if you just get a window air conditioner that just keeps it at 85, that would really help your corn snake a lot. Not to say they can't get to 90 degrees, but 90 is kind of pushing it. Again, like I mentioned earlier, your corn snakes, especially the young ones, are going to be more prone to overheating than underheating. So if your enclosure is at 75, babies are probably not going to be able to thrive quite as well at 75. Adults will be okay at 75. But if your house is at 75 and you have a baby corn snake, you probably want to get at least something so it'll get up to about 80 to 85 degrees. Okay, last question from Jillian on Facebook. My female corn snake who has never been around another snake just laid eggs. What do I do? This is a very odd thing that has been happening a lot this year, which is either virgin females or females that have never been around males or have never, if maybe they haven't been around a male in like years, they're just laying eggs. For some reason, 2020 is the year for females to just randomly lay eggs. Don't panic. That's the first thing. Just don't panic. It's similar, chickens lay eggs that aren't fertile all the time. Snakes will do it sometimes too. It's uncommon in corn snakes, which is why it's strange to me that it's happening so many times this year. I've had over a dozen people come to me and say, I thought this snake was a male, but it's a female and it just laid eggs. We've had it its whole life, and all of a sudden there's just eggs in there. We have no idea. Or I haven't bred this female in like 5 years and she's just laying eggs. What's the deal? Or even if it's just like, we just had this female corn snake, we've had her for 12 years, and all of a sudden this year she just decided to lay eggs. Sorry, that was my phone going off again. Don't know if you could hear that. I should probably just turn it off. Anyway, this video is almost over. Don't panic. It's most likely that the eggs are infertile. If you want, I can go over in a video later on the difference between fertile and infertile eggs. Let me know down in the comments if you want that video. I can kind of make it a little longer video, or just kind of make it a little snippet somewhere in the next video if you want. The only thing that I would do for a female like this is to kind of pick her up and check her belly about a third of the way down her body and then all the way down to the tail. Check for any lumps to make sure that the eggs, there's none like stuck in her. Usually they'll go ahead and push them out and it's fine. But if you notice that there's still some like obvious egg bumps in her after a day or two, definitely get her in with the vet, and the veterinarian can help her move those eggs out. You don't want to necessarily do that if you're not experienced with it, because it can, it can tear her uterus, or there can be other complications like the uterus could be twisted, and that's why she can't get the eggs out. So it's best to just take her to the vet if she hasn't pushed the eggs out within a couple of days of you noticing the first few. Generally speaking though, you're not going to have this problem. She'll just lay the eggs, and you can try to incubate them, but from not necessarily my personal experience, but experiences from friends, females who lay eggs that when they haven't been exposed to a male, even when they're fertile, the offspring usually are not healthy, they're not viable. They might incubate for the right amount of time, but when they hatch, sometimes they're deformed and stuff like that. So it's almost not worth that's called a parthenogenic clutch, which I can go into parthenogenesis in another video as well if you'd like to know about that. But that's essentially when a female clones herself and she lays eggs with females that have, or not just females, also males can happen too, with babies that just have her genetics and no male genetics. And it sounds really cool until there's deformities and other problems that can happen as a result of that. So generally speaking, if this happens to your female, don't panic, but just make sure that she's doing well and she's healthy. Make sure she has access to water, and feed her relatively soon after she lays the eggs, because she's going to be out of a lot of energy. That's all the questions that I have for today. This video is almost 20 minutes long, and here I was going to try to make it 15. We'll try to make it 15 next time. I just really thought that these questions were important ones, especially the heating question, because that's going to be it's going to be a big issue if you overheat your snakes. You definitely don't want to do that. So like I said, if you would like to read either of these books about corn snake genetics, you can find them on my website at sarahsnakeshop.com. I'll be posting babies that are available here pretty soon, hopefully. We just hatched our first clutch of the year. It's a little late. It's like June. It's June 23rd right now, which is really late for me to be hatching my very first clutch of the year, but it happens. Every year is different. But I will be posting them for sale on my website only. Facebook does not do animal sales. If you are new to my channel or you're not even aware of my Facebook page, it's facebook.com/sarahsnakeshop. No apostrophes, but periods between the words. So Sarah's, period, snake, period, shop. If you go to sarahsnakeshop.com, there's also no apostrophes. It's all just one word. I know that's a little bit confusing. And if you want to submit any questions, you can comment them down below. You can send them to my Facebook page, or you can email them to me at sarahsnakeshop@gmail.com, all one word. Yeah, thanks for being with me during this very, very long video, guys. And hopefully next time will be a little bit shorter. And let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Do you want me to go through different genetics? Do you want me to maybe pick one topic to talk about for one video instead of doing, 5 or 6 different questions? Do you want me to maybe just pick one and go into really deep detail on that topic? And if so, what topic would you like me to talk about? Comment down below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, share, all those things, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.